Hello, and welcome to the Security Industry Association Vertical Insights Symposium on Retail Security. I'm Ron Hawkins, Director of Industry Relations for SIA. The Security Industry Association is the leading trade association for physical security technology businesses. We have more than 1,500 corporate members, including manufacturers, integrators, service providers, and others. We provide a variety of government relations, learning and development, technical standards, networking, and other resources and services to our members, all of which can be found on our website at securityindustry.org. And we are the premier sponsor of the ISC West and ISC East trade shows and conferences. And if you will be at ISC East next week, please stop by and visit us in booth 1037. With flash mobs overrunning stores, organized retail crime increasing, and shops being forced to leave high crime areas, retail security issues have rarely been so prominent. As the holiday shopping season approaches, today's symposium will examine the threats that stores face, the legal and financial considerations that they must weigh, and the policy and technology solutions that can mitigate shrinkage, as well as the risk of harm to customers and staff. SIA is especially pleased to be able to partner with experts from both the National Association of Convenience Stores and the Retail Industry Leaders Association in the presentation of today's event. If you miss anything over the next 2 hours, we will have a recording posted on the SIA website. Also, please remember during the event that we welcome your questions. So if you have anything that you would like to ask our presenters or any comments that you would like to make, please make use of the Q&A icon on your screen. I do want to make sure to thank our sponsors, Ameristar and ZK Teco. We greatly appreciate their support of this symposium and other SIA activities and events. Check them out at ameristarperimeter.com and zktecousa.com. Our first presenter is Margaret Mannion, Manager of Government Relations for the National Association of Convenience Stores, a global trade association dedicated to advancing convenience and fuel retailing with more than 1,300 retailer and 1,600 supplier members. She previously worked as grassroots manager at the association, and prior to that was Director of Operations at the Gola Graham Group and a Foreign Policy and National Security Fellow with then Senator David Perdue of Georgia. Margaret, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our 2 hours here. If I can go ahead, I'm going to share my screen. And Ron, let me know if you can see this.
Yes, we're seeing it.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us today. As Ron said, my name is Margaret Mannion. I'm the Director or Manager of Government Relations for the National Association of Convenience Stores. And before we dive into the state of retail crime and convenience, I'll share just a little bit about NACS kind of by the numbers. So across the country, there's 152,000 convenience stores. We're in every state, we're in every city, county, congressional district. We employ 2.74 million employees. We process about 165 million transactions a day, which comes out to about half of America's population comes into a store every day. We sell around 80% of our nation's motor fuels, and we also check more IDs every day than TSA does. And as Ron said, we have 1,300 retail members, 1,600 supplier members, and we have members from over 50 countries. So we're a global association as well. And some of our member companies, you see here some big names like 7-Eleven, Quick Trip, Wawa Sheets. But of those 152,000 convenience stores that are across the US, 63% are single store operators, and 70% own 10 stores or less. And many of these folks are first generation Americans. So while you may know the names of some of the folks you see on the screen, we really are an industry of small business and of, your mom and pop stores. And over the past couple of years, we have definitely seen this influx of organized retail crime that's been affecting retailers across the country and across all industries. And alongside these ORC headlines, we really started to see headlines like the ones you see on your screen here popping up more and more frequently for our industry specifically. And we started hearing since COVID really from our members that crime, specifically violent crime, was taking the #1 spot of the issue that's keeping them up at night. This is on top of other issues that historically have been the #1 thing they're worried about, things like credit card swipe fees or taxes or labor. We realized then, after kind of looking internally and hearing from our members, that our offering as an association was slim at best. There are so many other associations who are leaders in this space who have dedicated loss prevention and asset protection experts on their teams. And for us at Nex, the last study that we did as an association on crime in the convenience store industry was published in 1991, and that is a big problem. So what did we do about that? Internally at Nex, we formed a working group and decided that in order to best serve the needs of our members, we had to first really get an accurate pulse of just how prevalent this issue is, where the needs are, where in the country are people having the most problems, what's working, what's not working. So at the end of 2023, we sent out a survey to our membership, and we were really pleased with the high survey participation rate and that it was representative of our entire industry. So overall, we had about 18,000 convenience store sites represented. All 6 of our Nex regions, how we split up the country, were represented. And importantly, all 5 of our Nex size classifications were represented as well, too. So we operate or split folks up into A-sized operators, so folks who own 1 to 10 stores, and go all the way up to E-sized operators. And those are people who operate over 500 stores. So jumping into the data, first off, we found that our industry's commitment to investing in loss prevention resources was not really at pace with what we were seeing in terms of losses as an industry. Only 42% of respondents had a dedicated team on loss prevention or asset protection, and more than half of the respondents had yet to dedicate any resources to this growing problem. And it really didn't match with our internal state of the industry numbers that we publish every year that have shown that internal merchandise shrink, so that's losses inside of the convenience store itself, that has more than doubled since 2020, from 1.2 billion in 2020, and now we're up to 2.5 billion as of 2023. And when it comes to those who are dedicating resources to loss prevention, really only the largest retailers were all in on having a dedicated loss prevention team. So your E-sized operators, the ones who operate 500 or more stores, they had about the equivalent of 17.5 full-time workers, with 100% of those who responded saying that they do have a dedicated staff, while only 19% of our smallest operators had a dedicated employee or team member. And we also asked that those who do have a budget for loss prevention to share with us where they were allocating those in the budget. And far and away, technology and video analytics were the top 2 categories commanding the greatest share of resource dollars. Technology was at 32%, video analytics at 25.4%. And this really showed to us that our members are in the market today looking for technology-based solutions in order to really get ahead of the issues that they're facing in their stores. They're looking for the next state-of-the-art camera system or monitoring systems, things like that. We also split up these results by chain size, and I love looking at it this way because you can really see that our A-sized operators up to our C-sized operators, these are people who might just be dipping their toes into the loss prevention world for the very first time, or they have to be judicious about where they're spending their money, and they're dedicating these dollars towards technology and video analytics, primarily because they're trying to capture better data on the problems that they're facing that they might not have been able to capture previously. And for our larger operators, they've already invested in those technology solutions. So their focus now is really on dedicating those investments into building out their loss prevention teams with more people, with loss prevention staff, with dedicated guards, people who are able to dive into that data that their technology has captured to try and get to the root of the issues that they might be facing. And they are also looking to come up with creative solutions for those problems that the technology might not be able to provide, that only a human can provide. And so now turning to the types of crime that our stores are experiencing. And the interesting thing to note here is that retailers believe that internal theft and external theft, internal theft being employee theft and external being things like shoplifting, those are for them number one and the number two risks in order of frequency. The results are really close. So I would be curious to see if we did this survey again at the end of this year, if those would flip. I was actually shocked that internal theft took the number one spot. I did not think that was as big of an issue as folks have been experiencing. Payment fraud, things like skimming of credit cards or debit cards, is at number three. Number four, unsheltered people loitering issues. That's another thing that we continue to hear from our members, and I'll kind of dive into that in a minute. But violent crime also makes an appearance on this list. You have guest on associate violence at the number 6 spot, associate on associate violence, gun violence, mass violence taking the 9th, 10th, and 11th spots. The FBI crime data says that convenience stores and gas stations account for about 4.45% of the violent crime that happens in this country. And this is the type of crime that I was talking about that our retailers, that's keeping our retailers up at night. It's those headlines that I showed at the beginning of this presentation. Violent crime is more often than not the type of crime that ends up making the stores in our industry close for good in their communities if they're unable to really tackle that issue. And you'll also note here that we separated out organized retail crime from the other types of crime, and that's because ORC doesn't really touch our industry the same way that it impacts your larger retailers who sell higher ticket items, people like Home Depot or Target or Walmart. Where we do see ORC play out in our industry is through fuel theft, specifically diesel fuel, and in tobacco theft, things like menthol cigarettes or flavored tobacco products that get resold on the black market. And usually that's around, we see a higher rate of that happening near states that have flavored tobacco bans or cities or towns that have implemented those kinds of bans. And just an aside here, because this is so unique to our industry, I wanted to share a little bit about what fuel theft looks like. Fuel theft is done by manipulating something inside of a fuel dispenser called the pulser. And what the pulser is, it's an electrical sensor that essentially rotates while you're pumping your gas. And it's what allows the computer to calculate how many gallons you're pumping and the corresponding price that you'll have to pay. So as you're seeing, on the screen while you're pumping your gas, the dollars go up, you're seeing the gallons go up in the same way. And what thieves are able to do is, in really less than 2 minutes, they have timed this in the past, they're able to break into the fuel pump, tamper with the pulser, and then pump gas into trucks like the one you see on the right-hand side here. And these trucks are usually completely modified to have these massive 500+ gallon tanks hidden inside of the car. And the thieves are able to manipulate the pulser so that those 500 gallons of fuel that get funneled into the truck, they pay for it. It's like $5. And we know that stolen fuel usually goes to fund cartel movement throughout the country through both human and narcotics trafficking. And we also see it end up being sold to independent or smaller trucking companies who are trying to get diesel fuel on the cheap. Anyway, that's a short aside here. People always find this fascinating, so I wanted to share that with everyone today. But back to our survey. We talked about where folks would list the types of crime in terms of frequency in their stores. But the other thing we found interesting was how the level of concern had really changed over the past year for some of those risks and threats. And at the number 1 spot, even though unsheltered people and loitering took the number 4 slot on that frequency list, it's number 1 here, as the number 1 concern that had their worry as significantly increased. And data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development has shown that since COVID, homelessness rates have risen more than 30%. And we're really seeing that play out in our industry, in our parking lots, behind the stores, on the side of the stores. Oftentimes in America, there's convenience stores in every single community. And more often than not, the stores in our industry are open 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And usually in many communities, it might be the last light on. So it attracts people to those locations when they might have nowhere else to go in town. Guest and associate violence is tied with external theft as well, the number 2 and 3 slot here. And I really do think that number is up for retailers in most industries. Since COVID, we've been hearing from our store owners that there has just been this shift in society where situations inside of stores with guests, if things go wrong, they escalate so quickly to one of violence. And it's kind of leaving our store owners, the convenience retailers themselves, shaking their heads. And it's been such a difficult issue for them to tackle. And I definitely think there's still a lot of work to be done in that space. We also split this up by chain size as well, too, similarly to the other one we did. And you can see here that our smaller operators listed guest on associate violence as their number 1, and it was a little lower for our larger operators, but you can still see that even across all chain sizes, whether you're a single store operator or you operate over 500 stores, multi-state presence, they're all experiencing just about the same top 5 types of crimes. They just differ in the terms of the level of concern felt. We also wanted to get a sense of where our industry stood in terms of all retail and their investments in loss prevention and safety assets. So we compared our data results that we collected from our 2023 survey to the National Retail Federation's 2022 survey, Crime and Loss Prevention Data Survey. And what we found really was that in terms of technology implementation plans by our retailers, outside of personal protective devices, so things like body-worn cameras for our clerks or panic buttons, our channel has fallen behind all of retail in this space. The other thing that we wanted to look at as well, too, was the way that our retailers felt about state and local law enforcement and how satisfied they were with their response times. And compared to all retail, our industry is less pleased and less satisfied with law enforcement. We've seen this play out in certain markets across the country where the police, when one of our store clerks calls the police after someone's shoplifted something, they take hours to get to the store after they're called. We've seen that they're told to stop calling the police so much because they're putting a drain on already tight resources. And in one local jurisdiction, we have even heard that one local police department has told a number of our retailers in that market to stop putting in such a high volume of calls to the police. Otherwise, they will start receiving fines and citations for having nuisance stores. And this is something that we at NACS are trying to help assist our retailers navigate. And that is just one of the very many things that our retailers have been told by law enforcement. And finally, we looked at the safety and loss prevention training that our retailers are providing for their employees. Most do a code of conduct and face-to-face training alongside computer-based training or app-based training. And then from there, you definitely see a drop-off. And we realized that there's not a lot of training and education programs that are readily available for our industry specifically on topics like de-escalation or active shooters or drug overdose training or mental health crisis training. And our data also suggests that beyond the first 30 days when an employee is first hired, the things that that employee learns, it starts to slip because the majority of our retailers don't have these education programs available on an ongoing process for as long as the employee is working for the company. And so that's really what we've been working on over the past year since doing this survey is we want to be able to build out a better offering for our members. So we identified a number of different areas of training curricula that our retailers were looking for. And this year we've been working to put out our own webinars and training modules that our members can use for their own employees on the topics that you see here, things like de-escalation for both violent and non-violent incidents, active shooter preparedness, mental health issues, drug overdoses, fuel theft. And the number one thing that we have been working on is actually coming up in about 3 weeks. It's really exciting for us. We're putting on our own inaugural Loss Prevention and Safety Symposium in Dallas. It's going to be December 3rd and 4th at the Hyatt Regency at DFW Airport. And this is a brand new event that's been specifically tailored for our industry. And we do have a lot of our members who attend RELA and NRF's annual loss prevention conferences, but we do also think that there is a need for folks in our industry to get together just because we have such a unique footprint and industry itself and industry issues. So we're really excited about it. And you don't have to be a NACS member to attend. Registration's a flat fee. It's just going to be a 24-hour event. We're going to have an agenda with education sessions on protecting people, safeguarding against loss, and building safer communities. And we're also going to have some exhibits for vendors who do offer loss prevention resources for retailers to show those off. And we'll also have some networking opportunities as well. And folks that are attending, we have retailers who are attending, both the owner operators and employees of the stores, people who are on their government relations teams or loss prevention teams. We'll also have some state association executives as well, distributors, so those who deliver products to stores, suppliers who offer those technology security solutions, along with suppliers who supply those high target theft categories, things like tobacco products or alcoholic beverages, fuel, things like that. And finally, just to wrap us up here, I wanted to share a quick note on 2 legislative priorities that we've been working on. NACS is unique in that we don't lobby at the state and local level, but we do have state associations that we're affiliated with, and which we do try throughout the year to help provide help where we can. And so before we wrap, I just want to share these 2 things. The first one, in Florida last year, fuel theft was actually made a felony after what I was sharing. We were able to run a bill at the state level, Florida Senate Bill 1150, which made fuel theft a felony. And we're trying to encourage other states to pursue similar legislation in their upcoming legislative sessions. And finally, in Arizona, this actually just happened. It's the first state in the nation to pursue a policy like this. What Arizona has done, they created something called Proposition 312. And what Prop 312 does is it allows Arizona property owners, like your convenience retailers, who have taken on expenses by trying to deal with cities that have failed to enforce nuisance ordinances, it would allow them to get a refund for those damages from the city on their property taxes. And this all really started in 2020 in Phoenix, when the city of Phoenix decided downtown, they were setting aside a section of the downtown area as an unofficial open air homeless shelter. And at its peak, there were about 1,000 homeless people living there, sleeping in tents and on the sidewalks, and they were all in front of and around the state capitol, and it was a huge issue for our convenience retailers who operated in those areas. The city of Phoenix even instructed the police department to stop enforcing laws against drug use and other public nuisances on public and private property, and even in some cases against violent crimes. And so this year, the state ran Proposition 312 on the ballot in November, and it actually just passed this past election day. So we're really curious to see what's going to happen, since this is the first in the nation to pursue something like this. We're going to be watching that space to see if other states can follow suit. And at the federal level, Congress is difficult these days. Things don't really get passed, but we're working with the other retail associations like RELA and NRF for the passage of the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act. And we're also looking towards next Congress to try and find some unique or creative ways that we might be able to make an impact at the federal level. And really, ultimately, what we want to do is just share our industry stories and struggles in this space with lawmakers. So that's a bit of where we're at as an industry. It's always a work in progress, but I do think that we've got a really good baseline built out from our work over the past year, from our survey. We're really looking forward to 2025, doing more things. And we would love to see you at our Loss Prevention and Safety Symposium in December. If you're interested, anyone is welcome to attend. And thank you to SIA for having me. I don't know if there are any questions, but if there are, I'm more than happy to take some. I can go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. That's great stuff. Really fascinating information from the survey. And you're right, the fuel part really did jump out as one of the more interesting ones. I don't know about our attendees, but I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
Or
I hadn't either until someone was like, "This is a massive problem."
all right, but we do have a question, and it's a nice segue since you were talking about government relations issues. So the question is there an initiative to have a tax break for expenses to secure their facilities?
That is a great question. That's something that we're actually looking for next year as well, too, since it's going to be such a big tax year. I have a meeting next week with some of our consultants and some of our retailers to try to decide exactly what we might be able to push for. So we'll see. TBD.
One other little tidbit I thought was interesting was convenience stores check more IDs every day than TSA.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Responsible retailing is a huge part of our industry. We sell, age-restricted products, and we want to be able to sell them legally and responsibly. So that's a thing we take really seriously.
Yeah. So is there any technology involved in that typically, or is it usually a visual check?
Usually a visual check. Some of them have it integrated into their POS systems, so they're able to scan it. And Axe is actually working on, we have something called TruAge. It's a project that we're running that essentially would create an ID on your phone, like via an app. I don't know a lot of the specifics on it because it's still a work in progress, but that's something that internally, I think they're running some little mini pilots in California and Minnesota right now. TruAge, TRUAge. That's what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Really good stuff. Perfect timing. Right at 1:30. So
Great.
we'll let you go. Thank you very much for doing this. Good luck with the symposium next month. And as you guys get more into security, I hope that our associations can work together on some more.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a need. As I said, our folks, they're seeking answers, solutions. So we're really excited about it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, so if I could have our next panel turn on their microphones and video cameras. So up next, we have a panel of expert SIA members. I am pleased to welcome as moderator, a great friend of SIA, Rob Ryder, principal of Ryder and Ryder Consulting, and an industry leader in both perimeter security and the protection and safety of pedestrians in crowded spaces and retail locations. So Rob, thank you for doing this.
Well, it's SIA. I can't say no to you, or I can't say no to Don. So, I'm kind of stuck.
Appreciate that.
So we have an interesting panel. Ron, if you have it in front of you, can you read the title of this section? And if you don't have it in front of you, I'll make it up.
It's pretty simple. Technology solutions for retail security.
Yeah, there's a longer version of that. So we will obviously be talking a lot about the technology side of it. We'll also be talking about the simple crime side of this. But this is a topic that I've been following for a number of reasons for a long time. And I'm really lucky that we have a panel put together that A is smarter than me. I'm probably older than all of them put together. But more importantly, I think what we want to talk about here is the leverage that's available to people. Um, and ways to make a buck go farther, to do more than one thing, and really in the long run keep the public and employees safe. So how about we've got on my screen it's Amy, Billy, and Scott. So how about just a quick 1.5 minute discussion about who you is and who you work for each of you. We'll start with Amy.
Thank you, Rob. I'm Amy Dunton, and I am currently a business development specialist for Ameristar Perimeter Security, part of the Asa Abloy family. I have been in mission critical, but in security for 20 years or so, and lots of fun experiences, and I'm looking forward to talking about those today. Quick.
Billy, that was faster than I thought, so you're up faster than we hoped.
Sounds good. My name is Billy Endesser. I'm the director of business development with a company called Eagle Technology. I've been a part of the security industry for over 15 years. My main focus in security is making sure that people's processes and procedures line up with the technology that they have available to them in their spaces. So, yeah.
Scott, you're up.
Thanks for having me. My name is Scott Bohm. I'm the EVP of Entrance Control Products here at ZK Teco USA. I get involved in a lot of processes and procedural and product development. I have a long history in retail, loss prevention, asset management, from transportation, logistics to retail ops to you name it, just about all four corners of it. Specializing in looking at your current operations and maximizing, similar to what the title of this webinar is to expand upon your existing technologies and that kind of thing. I have a very good knack for taking what's existing and maybe tweaking it and making your processes and environments more safer and secure and that kind of thing. So thank you for having me, and looking forward to the rest.
Yeah, almost as if there was a plan as to why you got invited.
Yeah.
And so while we're on the topic, just really quick, Scott, I'm going to ask you a question and I'll bounce out.
Sure.
We're going to be using a lot of terms. I think probably most of the people on the call all agree on what the terms are, but for just in case, let's talk about loss prevention as a kind of a generic, and get as specific as you want. But at the end of the day, people kind of need to understand what might, to some people, seem very specialized, and to other people might be just a catch-all.
Okay. Loss prevention has evolved. I've been involved in LP and asset protection probably for, it's over 40 years now. It's come a long way from the old traditional security guard, standing at the door, validating, receipts and that kind of thing, to the store detectives, creeping around, looking to catch the bad guys and, catching the professional guys at some point. And then, it's now evolved into this, fast forward to now, the asset protection team is really involved in, and I'll use this term, all four corners of a business, because it's not just about shrink, it's about loss of opportunities in sales, in stock conditions. I mean, I could just go on about that. A true asset protection team is going to look at all the avenues of opportunity that are going to help increase sales, increase the safety levels, as well as dealing with food safety and sanitation levels, and providing a safe shopping environment for their customers.
Cool. We'll come back to the notion of why my toothpaste is locked up. But I want to bounce to Billy really quickly. Billy, in your bio that you sent me, you use three of the words that are near and dear to my heart, which is policies, procedures, and processes. Not that I'm an old guy who thinks rigidly, but I'm an old guy who thinks in the box. So what can security technology do to A, help people with those three things, but also leverage so that you can do more things with your dollars?
Yeah, so there's some great platforms out there, and I'm sure people know that there's new laws coming up regarding what's required of retail owners to provide safety to their retail workers. And there's always a very large turnover in those spaces. Having a platform where you have the ability to streamline those processes and procedures that you have written within your businesses. Um, Sitting on the back end of your video, sitting on the back end of your card access, sitting on the back end of your, um, you know, metal detectors can really help you keep a constant policy and process and procedure going. It's as simple as making sure that you have the right notifications set up to be sent to the correct people, or making sure that your system is directly calling 911 instead of going through a third party.
So if you're going to be doing those things, there's two things that come to my mind. One is there's going to be a cost, and
Yeah,
two, there's going to be a training requirement. Can you talk about those in either order you want to talk about them?
of course. So when it comes to the cost of systems like those with the background platform, some of them are already built into your existing VMS system, and then it's an add-on license. Some of them are separate systems. So the cost can be extremely minimal. It really depends on which system you're wanting to go with and what kind of features you're wanting. E911 is normally an additional cost per month. A lot of systems will break it down based on, do you want a voice call to be done or a text message, or are you just looking for a phone call or an email? So it really can be customized as to how you want that platform to work for you and your company. And for the second part of your question, it really is based on needs. And yeah, it can sort of all flow together. It can be in different spaces. So yeah.
I just, my thing is it's hard to expect a lawyer to become a shop worker, just like it's really hard for a clerk or somebody who's working in a retail environment to become a lawyer. And there's an awful lot of lawyering involved in all this stuff now. What shoplifters can you stop? How can you stop them? And it seems to me that part of what this technology does is I would hope take away some of the guesswork and over time reduce the amount of criminality that's happening in these stores, whether it's organized retail crime or the disorganized shoplifting that I'm much more exposed to.
Yeah. And when you look at some of these platforms, a lot of this, what it does is it takes out that human error. So let's say you have a security guard that sees someone leaving the store, they know they didn't pay for it, they can hit a button or can send an alert to the system, where then your backend platform is using video analytics based on facial recognition, LPR, and then you can send that information out, meaning now you have a record of who was there, what they did, and now you can get an alert before they even enter your property if you have an LPR camera set up, to say, hey, this person comes in, this is what they do. We can have 911 call before they even get into the building to stop them from getting in.
Well, I figure if they can use my face to check me on an airplane, they can use somebody's face to keep them from stealing my toothpaste. So why is my toothpaste being locked up? What's the deal with that?
So there are specific items like toothpaste, infant formula, and it's really a lot of basic necessities that people are coming in and stealing, um, due to inflation, due to the inability to get it, the ability to resell those items is huge. And a lot of people can go in, steal a bunch of items like that, make it look like they're a extreme couponer on
Yeah.
social media and resell them for high dollar amounts and not have to have a traditional working job. So
Gotcha.
that is a huge movement and a lot of reasons why your toothpaste is locked at infant formula. Getting to the point now where you're limited on the number of toilet paper you can take at a retail establishment. So even if it's not locked up yet, you can only buy
Yeah.
2 at a time.
There you go. Hey, Scott, I'm going to bounce back to you
Sure.
on this topic of resale. And sorry to just hit you with a question, but you know, this is a crime-focused discussion, obviously. But if technology can do more than one thing at a time, obviously it's a leverage point and a savings. Can you talk a little bit about let's see, how would I say it? The ability for people to steal stuff, put it on eBay or put it on whatever they're putting it on, Amazon, and reselling it changes the whole makeup of who's stealing and why. Can you talk a little bit about how technology is kind of being used, not just to stop the theft, but to monitor how that's working?
Sure. I mean, you could look at it from a traditional ORC perspective. So I got involved with before it was even thought about called ORC, probably about 20 something years ago, in a joint operation with New Jersey State Police, FBI, and Pennsylvania State Police. So it starts at a lower level, right? And so let's just talk about the protection of the product, right? You know, a lot of retailers have video, right? Video's become inexpensive or more affordable, I should say, for a lot of different retailers. I would say the larger ones actually might have a bigger appetite for it, a bigger budget. As you get into smaller retails, similar to what was spoken before about like your national convenience store kind of environment, it's a little bit different, but they still manage to figure out how to do video. So video is really looked at as a post environment kind of thing. But now it's kind of fast forward with analytics to kind of give you the ability to set up geofences, similar to what Billy was talking before about giving you the alerts and that kind of thing, which is very helpful now. You don't want to lock everything up, and there's been studies about locking up some of the HBA or personal aid items, from razor blades to toothbrushes to toothpaste to. I mean, my experience in some environments, we had to lock up packages of Kool-Aid, right? And that's God's honest truth in some environments. So it geographically it does change. It sounds silly, but you know, those demands come about through external pressures from, I would call, they're really resellers, but small business owners that are sending people into these stores with a shopping list and say, I need you to give me 15 Tylenol PMs. I need you to get me this, this, and this. And these bad guys are coming in and getting that and giving it to these bodegas, right? These small shop owners. That being said, you know, you could use this video to give you post analysis on who's doing this, who's in the area, who's causing these shelf sweeps, so that you can now get together with law enforcement and work on a proactive strategy on going after these individuals, but also reducing some of the risk. And you could talk about other technologies layered into this. You could use EAS. Now, people will say, well, I got to go and tag every item. All right, so don't tag every item, because if they're sweeping the shelf, guess what? They're taking more than one. So tag every other item, right? So there's things working with manufacturers on EAS. There's also PDMs that we put in place on the shelves that actually, it's a monitor with a camera that actually shows you right at the shelf, right? There's a lot of proactive things you could do in the preventative side of the world that are not as cost effective or labor intensive, that could give you some of the results in reducing that level of exposure and you know, stopping and deterring. I don't want to say stopping, but deterring a lot of bad guys.
Yeah, we run into that. And I think the talk about the video surveillance and stuff segues well to a slight shift in the conversation. Ron, you want to do some videos?
Yeah, Rob, pull up first one here. Hey, are you seeing this?
Yeah, we're seeing, not here, not running, but we see it.
All right, I'm going to hit play.
Attaboy. And we're not getting sound, but that's okay. We can talk our way through it. So clearly in Rockland, which is outside of Sacramento, this is a motorsports thing, so a place with a lot of desirable motorcycles and mini bikes and all the things that kids like to steal. You can see that they backed a car in between the bollards and they've crashed through the entrance, and 8 or 9 people run in. And here they all are, and they seem to have a pretty good plan because they're all running specifically to certain items. And at the start of this video, we saw a U-Haul pickup and pull up, and there they are. And now, other than not having a ramp, these guys are figuring out how to do this. And I can't remember exactly, but it seems to me they're in and out in 3 minutes, which is probably faster than the response time.
Oh, yeah.
And so the lesson here is, why did you put up bollards if you put them up so far apart that you can't stop vehicles going between them and doing exactly what you put them up for, which is to protect the building. Let's show one more, Ron, and then we'll have comments, and then we'll do the last one.
All right. And by the way, Rob, they said on the newscast, that was a total of 4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes? Okay.
All right. Let's go to the next one.
It's the third one. If we're going out of order, if that's okay with you, it's okay with me.
Oh, you're right. Let me change that. Selected the wrong one.
It's okay. You're just getting Amy more and more excited to be able to talk about it. That's all.
All right. I think we're on the right one now.
There we are.
You can unmute that video if you'd like.
So this is a gentleman who is peering in, scoping out, seeing what's what. You've got accomplices back there. They've got the vehicle ready to go. And they gave somebody a bunch of beer, and in he goes. And back out, so he's got the gate pretty well open now. So there's $35,000, $40,000 worth of damage right there. I guess this is proof that there's hazards in being a bad guy.
Yeah.
And in they go. And Ron, I can't remember what kind of store this was. Was this a hardware store, or what was this?
It was a firearm shop, but as it
Oh.
turns out, there were no guns on display, so they were just able to get some knives and some other stuff.
Right, that's right. I forgot that. So yeah, so we have $30,000 worth of damage for what's probably $100 theft. That's sort of common in all of this. This last place, as we saw, did not have any bollards up. The one before did, but they might as well have not had them up. Amy, you're my physical security expert, and I know that because you are the incoming co-chairman of the Security Industry Association Perimeter Security Committee. So it falls to you to discuss this.
All right, thank you for that plug. To your point earlier of what's the point of having the bollards in front if they're going to be spaced so far apart that a car can get right through it. And that's one of the things that should be talked about, can be talked about, needs to be talked about is, are you checking a box by having bollards in front or some sort of protection, perimeter protection? Or what is the actual reasoning? Is it, okay, Billy talked about new laws coming in place. Are we putting these things in to check the box? Or are we actually strategically thinking about how we're going to implement these things? And how can we implement that along with the technology that is already existing? Is there something that we can do where, okay, there's a car sitting in the parking lot at night, everything is closed, they shouldn't be sitting there. Is that triggering an alert in and of itself? Or is that going to create too many false alerts, false positives? Is there something that you can do to integrate your current technology into the plan of the perimeter and physical bollards or fence? And again, just not having anything. You saw that car. It almost looked like either a PT Cruiser or a
Kia Soul.
Ford Fiesta. Oh, it was Kia Soul. That's what it is. I was thinking of the dancing hamsters. They danced right into that firearm shop. And while it looked like they did have, some bars on the doors, again, is that to check a box? Is that to obviously the majority of our physical security is, deter, detect, delay, deny, etc. But $30,000-$40,000, is that worth it? And then also, are you able to maybe capture any identifying features, privacy aside, that can also go into the discussion of, hey, these guys are in this is what they're doing. In our prep call, talked about 10 years ago, I worked for a company that did a lot of cybersecurity, but working with a large retailer, and actually followed I wouldn't say it's a full organized crime ring, but I wasn't involved all that deeply in it, but they could monitor as they were going from store to store up the interstate. So are there ways that we can kind of integrate this technology, use what you have, and where is that line of, okay, we can only do so much, but
Right.
it's
Yeah, that's a quick question for Billy. So one of the things I follow professionally is how many times people break into gun stores to steal guns, because stealing shampoo is one thing, stealing guns and selling them on the street to bad guys is another. And just as Amy just pointed out there, you can follow gangs that do this, or you can follow the people following the process, because you can steal a Kia or a Hyundai pretty easily. They get kids to do these things. So what is the leverage that the kind of technology you're talking about, Billy, that could help law enforcement or property owners saying, yeah, they're working their way up the interstate. They're going to be here in 5 days. What do I do?
So there is facial recognition AI, there's LPR AI that all can be added into your VMS systems. There is emergency management platforms. There's new AI generator reports that you can pull out of your systems to say, how many times has this one person been in my store in the last month? Not always are you going to find the person who's a criminal. Sometimes you're going to find a mom who has a brand new baby who isn't great at planning how many diapers she needs in a week. But, and sometimes they're the ones that are disguised and they are the criminals. So you have to be able to look at all of it. And then you have to build a really good, strong relationship with your local law enforcement and your local, even nonprofit organizations that focus on these kinds of things, that are, looking into sex trafficking, looking into how they stop this kind of prevention, and build relationship with them and work with them. Locally here, we have a domestic violence, sex trafficking organization who found that there was a local cartel that was using their sex traffic workers to go in and steal from organized crime situations, not just sex trafficking them. And in that, we were able to break down that entire operation and not just stop the retail crime, but also stop that sex trafficking at the same time. So building those different relationships is massive. Work with everybody, create partnerships. It's not just about the physical security or the technology. It's about the partnerships you can build to stop this.
Well, and proof that some bad guys are badder than others. So that's an interesting story. I heard that. And Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot, but not for a minute. Ron, can we do the last video and we'll get Scott talking about that?
Yep, stand by one. Okay, seeing it?
Yep, seeing it. So there's a store manager who has had a BFO. Boy, we skipped a lot. We're going to have to bounce back to the start there. And so there's a store manager who's angry. Here comes somebody trying to run into them. And as I mentioned before, that guy can back a trailer up better than I could in 1,000 years. But the lesson here is, if we can go just part way when I want to see how many ballers he hits. I think a little further when he backs up.
Looks like maybe two.
Yeah, I think he hits. I think he
Yeah.
hits two. Right. So he impacts one really hard and he hits the second one. So Scott, this video, this was at a BP in Florida. The lesson here is that you can use physical security measures and protect people and property. And the previous video, of course, is a different sort of retail, which is gun shops. And as I say, to me, there's a huge difference in allowing guns to be out on the street as opposed to, a box of Tylenol. But in your experience, do people call you as a consultant and say, "Hey, I've got a myriad of problems, and one of them is people driving through stores"?
So, my experience, not just in multiple levels of retail, from the grocery side to pharmacy, to gaming, entertainment. GameStop was a big part of
Oh yeah.
what's similar to be in this convenience store kind of environment. You're going to get a couple things that are going to happen, right? So you could say the bollards are matching what they would consider as, creating this safety mechanism. How do I phrase this? Let's go back. When you're going to put in a retail store, my experience has always been you have to do analysis. You have to do the crime analysis, crime index analysis, right? You have to understand like what the measures you want to put in your facility are going to match what your crime index is actually kind of telling you, right? What you're up against. Now, working in a supermarket business that was primarily urban environment, I mean, from the Bronx to Brooklyn to Baltimore to I've worked in a lot of tough areas as well. So I mean, you have to match what you need. Then it goes back to what can you do about training? Like for example, this lady, it looked like a lady to me anyway, was this person was out there mad yelling at the guy inside, right? So, and I think I really think that Billy would agree with me on some of this training piece where there's no reason for this individual to be out in the open doing this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So training is just another layer of what we're trying to get at. Right.
Exactly. If Mike Tyson wants to throw a left hook, don't stick your jaw out and wait for it. Now we're tight on time, and Ron knows I pride myself on being pretty good about this stuff. So we're going to give you guys each a whole minute, and I'm going to start it with Billy because Scott just mentioned you, Billy, in terms of the total picture. So what genius, amazing thing can you say in 60 seconds?
I'm going to tell you that partnerships are a huge deal. Training is huge. And taking the human error out of finding response times and using AI to recognize people or vehicles is probably going to be the best bet to help you stop retail crime in your area. Work with your local people.
Gotcha. And Amy, this week headline in Chicago was 8 ATMs were stolen in 24 hours in this one neighborhood of Chicago by using vehicles. Seeing as you're my physical security person, in your 1 minute, what can you tell people to be careful of in the world of vehicles or people trying to hurt people using vehicles?
Well, I would say this is why I get my cash at Trader Joe's when I'm checking out, so I don't have to to stand at an ATM. But it is going to kind of just piggyback on what Billy had said of just working also with your partners, but understanding that just because you maybe put something up, like in the video we saw, it was a bollard, it did its job, it slowed, but it didn't completely stop. And he could have backed up and rammed back in, and really understanding, okay, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to just slow them down? Are we trying to stop them? But just to really be aware of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what you're trying to stop. That's kind of the biggest thing, because you're never going to fully be able to financially stop 100% random vehicles, either plowing into your facility or backing up to your ATM and trying to take off with it. So yeah, it goes back to the processes and procedures of understanding also what is your why? Why are we doing this? And are we checking the box? But yeah, making sure that you're keeping people safe, not only from crime, but from the human error, as Billy says.
There you go. Okay, and Scott, we're going to close with you in 60 seconds.
Sure. There was Billy talked a lot about video, right? And the analytics side of the world. And I really believe that we have to get as an AP LP guy, we have to get other partners of your business to accept ownership some of this, like the risk management side of the business for slip and falls, the marketing side for allowing vendors to kind of see traffic, your buyer side so they can see in stock conditions. I mean, that helps offset some of the true traditional costs of what the LP guy catching bad guys with, right? It is a very big onion that we're talking about here today. There are so many different layers involved in this, and it really comes down to what Amy was talking about before about what's the vision, what's the goal, and there really needs to be like a well thought out plan. And accompanied with this is a budget, right? So, and you can't boil the ocean. And a lot of times I get the calls for people that need help. They're saying that to me and they're trying to boil the ocean. And we can't, Rome wasn't built in a day. So my ending thoughts are utilize the tools that you have in place and spread it around your whole organization. Let everybody have access to it. Don't be just that old school LP person. This is my video, my stuff, because it's so valuable to everybody in all aspects of the business.
Right, I appreciate that. Good way to summarize 30 minutes. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ron, I don't know if we have questions or how you want to move, but I think we're at the end of our time.
Yeah, unfortunately, at the end of our time, that was really great discussion, and appreciate all of you doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Nice to
Next
meet you
up,
guys.
Next up, I'd like to welcome Special Agent Brian Hackett, who is assigned to the Violent Crime Public Safety Group at Homeland Security Investigations, Special Agent in Charge, Washington, D.C. He has conducted investigations of organized theft groups for several years, and he previously conducted international and national security investigations. His prior law enforcement assignments include Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent in Charge, New York, the U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division, the Prince William County, Virginia Sheriff's Office, and the Prince William County, Virginia Police Department. In addition, he is currently a non-commissioned officer in the United States Army Reserves and has been enlisted for more than 12 years. Special Agent Hackett, welcome.
Good afternoon. Can you guys still hear me?
Can see your presentation, don't see a video of you.
Okay, we're I'm having someone work on the video. So thank you guys for allowing me to speak today. So what I've heard, and I didn't get on exactly when it started, but it seems like there's a lot of experts in the room today. In the chat, can everyone just let me know like what agency or what company you work for and how long you've been in the security business? And I'll just start the presentation. So I work for Homeland Security Investigations, Washington, D.C. And this is on Operation Boiling Point. I'm not sure if everyone or if anyone's ever heard of this. It's starting to make its rounds. I did this presentation a couple of weeks ago as well to some retailers from all different types of retailers, from that mostly mall stores, but then some outside of the malls as well. Go next slide. So Operation Boiling Point, it's HSI's response to organized theft groups. Over the past couple of years, and probably prior to that, I was a police officer working patrol and remember responding to stores for people stealing. Fast forward 20 years later, I'm doing cases like these related to these organized theft groups, which is much more sophisticated, and it's not something that law enforcement is kind of used to, or even loss prevention. And a lot of these cases do cross over into the national security realm. So HSI has, the Boiling Point has 4 pillars to establish the public-private sector partnerships. So like here, what we're doing today, we're making links with other people that fall into this space, develop actionable investigative intelligence leads. So that's when we get the information from from the locals, from the retailers, and we develop cases based off of that. And ultimately, our goal is to disrupt and dismantle the organized retail crime and the organized theft groups. This is HSI's area of responsibility. This should be pretty much up to date, but as you see, we have a very large presence. A lot of times when we say HSI or HSI is mentioned, they don't really know what we do. And that's even, in a lot of times, even in the law enforcement realm. So we originated from the former INS and then former Customs Service. And after 9/11, DHS was formed, and then we were formed as well and became HSI. Next slide. So I work in the DC office, which covers DC, Virginia, and West Virginia. And I believe a lot of you are maybe in Maryland, and this is our Maryland offices. This is right here is probably crucial when it comes to these organized theft groups. What this shows kind of like our international presence. HSI probably has the largest international presence of any federal agency, federal law enforcement investigative agency, because we're pretty much everywhere. And because of these investigations span all over the place, we have people that we can reach back to that work with the local national police in order to kind of further these investigations. So a lot of times, whether it's a South American theft group, whether it's the Roma group that come here specifically to commit crimes, commit fraud, it's much harder for retailers, even law enforcement locally, to find out who these people are. Through us, we can actually, a lot of times, determine who these people are. So this kind of just shows you, like, and you guys probably already know this, but huge loss. And because it's a huge loss, that it's a trickle-down effect that ultimately impacts the consumer. So we're all consumers, even though we work in the security space. So it's hitting all of our pockets. And so we can't just do this alone. You can't do it alone. The federal government can't do it alone. Local law enforcement can't do it alone. And so we definitely need to collaborate to be able to stop losses like this from happening. This is Operation Cornerstone. It's because HSI, or I'm sorry, Boiling Point falls under the financial program at our headquarters, and they also have other financial. So this is Cornerstone is one of the ones that they have as well, related to kind of anti-money laundering. And this just right here just kind of shows you like some of the losses and how it's increased over the years. It was mentioned earlier related to somewhat about cargo theft. Cargo theft is something that occurs and something that is unique to HSI because we evolved from the former Customs Service. We have the ability to track anything and everything that comes outside of the United States, or to the United States and goes out the United States. HSI and only CBP, or Customs and Border Protection, are the only ones that have access to this information. And so it's kind of unique. So we can kind of see what's going out and what's coming in, but uniquely what's going out in these large groups that are stealing things, a lot of times the stuff is going out. And because it's going out, we have the ability to kind of track this information. But also cargo theft is a huge issue, because when you could probably be in $1 million in just one container of whatever the shipment is that's being stolen. So HSI is working directly with this TAPA, this association, in order to kind of thwart that kind of stuff from occurring. ACAMS, it's another associated with sort of anti-money laundering. And so it's a guy that, like I said, you can use, and you can use the QR code if you're choose to, that you can download this PDF that could kind of help you if you want to be part of this association. So HSI has the National Lead Development Center. So the National Lead Development Center is pretty much the bread and butter of Boiling Point. it is a collaborative effort of essentially agents and intel analysts that liaison with local, state, federal partners, but also retailers such as yourself, loss prevention. And so this email is pretty unique, and it's because you have information, you can take that email or whatever information you have, send it to the National Lead Development Center, and they can assist you on your case. And this is an email that you can give to your local partners as well. And so photos, names, and because what you're tracking is an issue in your area, but also maybe in your organization. It may be also being happening in another organization or retailer. All right, next. This is probably a little bit outdated. This is from last year. I tried to get some updated information, but as you can see, they had in the past requests for information, but it continues to upward trend in all the things that they're being involved in. So it's not just, it's pretty much anything organized theft group related. And so this kind of shows the boosters and fencers, cargo theft, quick change schemes, the smash and grab skimming devices. I'm not sure how many, if people here are dealing with that, but that's another thing unique to HSI, because we can see and we do track people that are ordering these skimming devices that are coming here and obviously using that to steal information. This just kind of shows you, like I said, from 22 to 23, the amount of cases more than double than what they had the previous year. So I'm sure the numbers by the end of the year for this year will be much higher. So this is when it comes down to charges. These are some of the charges that can be utilized at the federal level. So probably one of the most unique ones, and probably is the best for something like what you're dealing, is a lot of the things that I'm seeing is people are coming from in one state and then they're going to another state to steal. And obviously they're taking that information, those stolen goods, and then transporting them across state lines. So that 18 USC 2314, that's, you have the hook, you have the federal nexus there. Now there is a threshold when it comes to these kind of things, but when I talked about the National Lead Development Center, what they kind of do is also case coordination to try to jurisdiction shop, because in one jurisdiction, locally or through the state or even federally, may not prosecute something, but a rural county or a rural federal district may decide that, hey, we're tired of this happening, these people coming here just to steal, and they will charge it. Now, it may not be a charge that would be prosecuted in your local jurisdiction, but that's something that case coordination, that is what the National Lead Development Center can do. These are another things too. So the credit card skimming, we were talking amongst ourselves before I got on, related to the gift card skimming. It's something I only heard about probably late last year, where they steal the cards and get all the numbers off, and then consistently run them, and then take the money off almost immediately, or within an hour. So these are particular applicable charges, and that could be done for that. And so the access device fraud is another thing where the skimming, when people put the skimming device on. So there's not a lot of groups that are doing it because it's a little bit more sophisticated, but these are applicable charges as well. So this just kind of shows you some investigations that HSI has done in recent years. And as you see, it's not just, people aren't just kind of doing, well, I don't have to really kind of tell you that, but you guys don't always see, once the investigation is going on, what else? So why these people are doing it? And so like the top right one or top left one where it says an ORC gang where they have all the guns. So it was an actual gang that was doing this in order to fund drugs and purchase guns and weapons and stuff like that. So it's not just a harmless crime. The other one with the national catalytic converters, I think that was the joint case between HSI and FBI, where I think it was over $1 billion worth of catalytic converters was seized. It was out of New Jersey. So this just kind of shows you some of the, like I said, that there's an upward trend of obviously 2020 with COVID, things weren't being stolen like that and people were in the house. But each year is going to continue to upward trend on the amount of money that seized, the arrests we make based on these particular cases. So it just kind of shows you what Boiling Point we're trying to do. We're trying to work these cases, but also just utilize what was talked about earlier, not just old investigative techniques, but using the Cybercrime Center to identify people, using the dark web to see where this stuff is being sold and things like that, using our financial crimes unit in order to not only seize money, but also trace the money where it's going, where to include cryptocurrency and everything like that. So we're working with e-commerce. So at one point we did have an agent that worked directly with eBay. Now it's, I'm not sure if that agent still works there or not, but we have a presence in all of this. And so we also have websites that we can actually do that to be able to scrub the information related to eBay, Amazon. Obviously, Marketplace is a huge one. I see stuff on Marketplace, and a lot of times I look at it, and it looks like, you know, a guy has 100 DeWalt drills. That's probably stolen goods. But who has time to do all that? Well, you can kind of do it through HSI is actually working with these retailers and e-commerce in order to kind of counter not only illicit goods, but also not just stolen goods, but also fake goods as well. So that just kind of goes back to like the Charlotte ring, where there was organized theft groups that were stealing over-the-counter medicine. The last time I went to got medicine for my son, it was $10 from cough medicine. So imagine that, just one bottle over a course of going through many different stores. You can easily see how quickly the price, the cost of the goods that are stolen goes up. Just kind of shows you another one from off a search warrant, all the amount of like a warehouse where they have all these goods stolen. Here is just some resources that HSI has been able to inform the retailers, information that you may need for your investigations or points of contact as well. So these right here, I'll stay right here for a little bit. And these emails are emails that you can reach out to directly. But like I said, that main one is probably the OTG case support, NLDC at hsi.dhs.gov. If you have information, I know one thing when it comes to retailers, and I've talked to retailers in the past, sometimes the retailers have a minimum amount. So some it may be $1,000 before they call local law enforcement. Well, I would say if you could send the information to the National Lead Development Center, they could track it, because sometimes it's not just they're committing crimes in your store, but they may be committing crimes in other stores. And if you link or they identify the person, that's information that could be given out to the next person that reaches out to the National Lead Development Center. This is the boiling point manager, and what slide? And this is our contact information for the community relations here in Washington, D.C. But one of the things I wanted to go all over here locally and here in Fairfax, we've been working directly with Fairfax PD. And so they actually have the Tyson's urban team, which is essentially their police department inside of the mall. And they do a really good job of working with the loss prevention and the stores that are in there, or encountering these groups. They use good use of resources, and they network with the PD networks with the loss prevention. And so they have established group chats that everyone's on. Hey, this person just left this store. They didn't steal anything, but I recognize them from, something that was stolen 2 weeks ago or stolen in someone else's store. So they recognize the trends that, hey, that this is not something they can do themselves. And sometimes it may be just one loss prevention person. But when you have a network of the loss prevention working together in order to kind of counter these groups, it makes plus up the numbers, even if you don't have the numbers or you don't have the budget, particularly for loss prevention. And I think that's pretty much it for me today. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Excellent information. So a few questions. So one of our earlier speakers, and you might not have had a chance to see her, but she was talking about how some convenience stores, whenever they would reach out to law enforcement, were not getting a great response. We're actually kind of getting a lot of pushback. And you just cited kind of the opposite example at Tyson's Corner with what's going on there with the police. So how important are public-private partnerships, and how can retailers work better with law enforcement?
I think it's a person to person. I think like if maybe that is the PD's well, I'm not sure where she was referring to, but maybe the local PD, that's their policy. But I think if you find a police officer that's willing to respond and willing to work, I think that and built that relationship, I think that really kind of helps foster the better relationship, and to be able to, because obviously we can't do these cases without the loss prevention. You guys are essentially the front lines. You guys see this stuff on a regular basis. So you know what someone's likely to do based on their behavior. Like, oh, I've seen this person before. I recognize them from a bulletin that loss prevention sent out. I know there are many associations that people can be involved in, but I know when I presented at a couple of weeks ago, was Majorca, the Mid-Atlantic Organized Retail Crime Association, and there was people from the governor's office here in Virginia, and then people from the Maryland U.S. Attorney General's office, and they were all about working these cases because they realize how much an issue it is. So I think if you can't get locally, maybe try the state police, or maybe try to look on whatever state you are. I'm sure now that they probably have an organized retail crime initiative, because it's essentially gotten out of hand.
Right. All right. You showed a couple of graphs showing some increasing numbers for ORC. Do you have it? Naturally, they were low in 2020, but more recently, do you have a sense of why we're seeing that kind of increase?
I just think that we're doing a better job of stopping them. I think that's really what boils down to is the increase. It probably was already happening, but I think the increase also is the ability and people working together. Like I know a lot of like the big Home Depot and I think Lowe's, I think now, or they're not all done, have put license plate readers at their stores. So things like that, I think really helps the ability to kind of counter these groups. And because of that, they realize more things are being stolen or more things are being reported.
Right. All right. When you see these incidents, whether flash mobs or crash and grabs or whatever, how often are those goods crossing state lines? How often are they crossing international borders?
I will say, I don't know how often, but I will say basically when I've been working with the locals here, and some of the cases that I'm working, up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So naturally, do we have it, knowing that they did transport across state lines? But it's circumstantial evidence, but it's still evidence. Whether they're taking it to a fence or whether they're sending it out, you can kind of think, okay, if they're stealing in this area and then they're in the next state the next day, most likely they still have, or whether they sent it out, they've actually taken it across lines, or they sent it out through FedEx or UPS and stuff like that. It still crosses state lines.
Right. You mentioned that one of the unique capabilities of HSI, given its history, where it came from, is the ability to get information about cargo shipments and ports and things like that. Given that, do you work with international law enforcement agencies?
Yes, we do, and we do work with them on a quite a regular basis, depending on what type of investigation it is. And so, most likely, we already have an attaché, and those attachés work directly with those international partners.
All right, great. All right, excellent information. Those are all the questions we have, so we will let you go, but definitely appreciate all the information. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so 3 great sessions, and we had a 4th one planned, but I'm afraid I have a bit of bad news. Our representative from the Retail Industry Leaders Association is testifying before Congress today. Was hoping that that he would be able to wrap up in time to join us, but as everybody knows, Congress works on its own schedule, so he is still at the Capitol and is unable to join us. He was going to talk about the Vibrant Communities initiative that RELA has started. It is a really fascinating, effective program. I saw a session on it at the IACP conference a couple weeks ago, and encourage you to take a look at what they're doing over there. And we do hope to have him with us next time around. So that having been said, we will wrap things up for today. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us. I want to thank all of our speakers. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors, Ameristar and ZK Techo, ameristarperimeter.com, zktechousa.com. Definitely appreciate all their support today and of SIA in general. And I hope to see many of you at ISC East next week. Remember to check us out at booth 1037. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day, and join us next month for our next Vertical Insights Symposium. That will be on the government vertical on December 17th. Thank you. Bye-bye.